What is up, everybody? It's Revv time. Today, I wanted to talk about what I'm calling kind of jumping off points for the new Dynamis 40 or the Revv D40. I've already demoed this on my channel, and I know Tyler Tomlinson did an amazing performance with this amp. I thought I would go into maybe how I would dial this, and like I said, I'm calling it kind of jumping off points. Like where would I start with this amp, having a fairly intimate knowledge of this amp, because I had quite a bit to do with the voicing of it. So the way you're going to hear it now, if you want to hear it on the mic, definitely check out the demo I did on my own channel. The way you're hearing it right now is direct. So straight off of the embedded 2 notes torpedo, Dyne IR, and hardware, and that always sounds great. I'm a fan of that because it's just so quick and easy to use. So that's how you're going to hear it. The cab you're hearing is a 4x12. It's the typical 4x12. I changed this one maybe just slightly, but it's very similar to the 4x12 cab you'd hear in like a D20, all the way up to the Revv Generator 120. So it's a Celestion loaded 4x12 cab with 57 and Royer combination, so a dynamic and a ribbon mic. Pretty standard. I dialed this one with the ribbon mic backed off just a little bit, but honestly, if you were to A-B the two, I don't know that you would really hear it. So that's what's going on there. Obviously, where I started is on channel 2, the drive channel, and this is kind of where I would start. I like the way that channel responds because I can go from neck position to bridge position. And I don't know that you noticed, but as a rule of thumb, if I've got any, especially Strat style guitar, I always make sure that my bridge pickup can be adjusted as far as the tone control solely at the bridge. So you can hear, like, I'll roll it up and down. Like right now, I've got the amp more dialed for neck position. If I go to back position, I've got the tone rolled off ever so slightly. If I roll it all the way up, I'll get more bite. And sometimes that's desirable, especially if I'm in a track, I'll just roll that all the way up. When I'm sitting and playing by myself, sometimes I'd rather, if I'm going from this Sometimes that's a little too bright, so I'll back it off a little bit. And I'm good to go. And that's a very subjective thing, but that's kind of how I dial for the most part. Unless I'm demoing, everything's always wide open. If I'm demoing something, the guitar is wide open. I don't back off anything because obviously, the listener needs to hear what's going on. Okay, so right now I've got the bright switch on and the boost, and the reverb is on. I can shut that off. I like having the reverb on when I'm playing by myself. Once again, that's to each his own, but the reverb sounds really good. Got it set pretty subtly. Maybe everything's just below noon depth and level on the back. So if I shut this bright switch off, once again, it's very subjective. Like for this tone, it's working great. But if I want the amp to sound a little bit more kind of pushed in the upper mids, I'll shut the bright switch off and actually use the treble hotter. Especially if I've got everything all the way up. To me, that's a little bit more kind of martially. But even in neck position, it still sounds cool. If I turn it back on, it's just a lot more toppy. I could go the other way, which is about where I had it-ish. I really like that for the neck tone. So the point I'm making when it comes to that bright switch is you're manipulating the top end. You're not just making it brighter or darker. It's more like, well, where do I want the top end of this thing to land? So that's really important. One thing I want to point out too is that your volume control is a tone control. And you'll notice this on the D25 and the D20 amps. As you roll that front end volume up, because the amps have headroom, you can roll it up more without it breaking up, but you'll get more low end. As you get more low end, obviously not just low end, but low mids, the amp's going to sound fatter, and then you dial accordingly. So as a start point, I like the gain about right there. I'll shut the reverb off. And I'll turn the tone all the way up so we can get an idea of what's going on the guitar. If I were to dime this, you can hear... You hear that low end that comes in? This amp is so dynamic, it won't break up unless I dig in more. So if I roll this all the way up, I'll know instinctively to turn down the bass. If I keep the bass hotter, that sounds cool while I'm playing by myself, but I know that's not going to fit in a track. So once again, it's subjective. If you're just hanging around, you can run more low end. But instinctively for me, as I turn up gain, and that goes for the clean channel as well, but if I'm going to turn up that gain, I'm going to be looking at the low end because it will bring more lows into it. So it dials more like a vintage amp would dial. So it's something I just, wanted to point out. I immediately want to turn the bass down a little bit. Now, obviously you have a depth control too. Now the depth control is more subtle on this amp. It's not super, super apparent. It's almost more like a resonance where it's more felt than heard. But I keep the depth control, and once again, it's going to vary from cab to cab, but I usually keep it about where I've got it set now, as well as the presence. But that's a nice thing about having that global depth and presence. You can dial things in globally to kind of get both channels where you want them to sit. So, and obviously the boost control on this channel, it does kind of do the same thing as a clean channel, but it does add I shouldn't say definitive, but you'll hear like a gain difference. So here's without it. And then with it, so it does kind of spread things out, but it does add gain. And yes, I keep playing the same chord over and over and over. I'm not trying to invent the guitar wheel while I'm demoing sounds. So sorry to be boring. Here's C5. So that, you know, I pretty much personally, I like that just in all the time, and then I'll manipulate the gain to taste. Okay, so that's what I had going on that channel. Those are kind of my thoughts. Also, this is my personal opinion on how I would dial this amp. And also your channel outputs. I wouldn't say this is a rule. It's a preference for me. I know this amp. Don't be afraid to run those a little bit hotter, especially from the cleans channel. Now, you can run it a little too hot on the clean channel and maybe hit, I'm assuming it would be the inverter, a little bit too hard, so you'll get a little bit of breakup. But if you want that, then it's cool, because this clean channel is pretty darn clean. But I would say don't be afraid to run those hotter. And just channel gains in general, I would say anywhere past about 2 o'clock on the majority of the Revv stuff, to me, sounds more open. Obviously, use your ears, dial it the way you want it, but I'm just kind of giving you my opinion as far as a reference point. Okay, so clean channel, I kind of start here. Now, same exact deal with this gain. If I want this to actually sound, I got the burps. If I want this to sound fatter, it'll get a little bit louder, but I'm also getting more low end. See how everything, and that's why I keep saying everything is a tone control, especially these volumes. You get more clarity. It just depends on how you want it to sound. I like it to be fatter, so I tend to want to roll it hotter. Not for louder, but so it's fatter, right? It'll get a little bit louder. But hear all that fatness that came in? Now, if I want to roll some of that out, then I've got control in my lows and mids. This is a really fat mid control, so if it brought it in a little bit too much, then I'll sculpt from here. But that's a cool, just to me, like a fatter clean tone. And if I go, you know, more of like a cot position, it's still pretty fat, and I've still got plenty of room to add top end. Without the bright switch, same deal applies. If I want a more kind of punched upper mid top end, I'll turn the treble up. If I want like a glassier top end, but maybe smoother upper mids, so now I've still got some glass up there, but I don't have as much of that upper mid punch. The boost control, same deal. In this case, it won't cause more gain like it did on the other channel, but it does, and I prefer to just have it in all the time. It just fattens everything up and makes the amp sound more pushed. And then, you know, results will vary. Maybe I'll do some videos hitting the clean channel with, and I'm sure we're going to do that on the live streams, or the boys are going to do that in Canada, hitting that clean channel with different pedals. This clean channel takes pedals like a champ. And the bright switch will come into play. It's like you might want to dial it without the bright switch if you know you're going to be hitting that channel with a lot of pedals. You have room to kind of manipulate things from there. So what I just did is I dimed the output. Now that's going to vary too, because that cabinet simulation is very efficient. If I was doing that into a 1x12 cab, or even a 4x12 cab that maybe wasn't as efficient, you would hear more actual kind of speaker breakup as well. But you can get this to break up if you run it hotter, especially pushing the channel output. And same thing will apply. You'll want to roll your lows off. Now it's breaking up a little bit. And what's cool is, if you wanted it to be, it's like, well, I don't want that. I want it more chimey, but I'm losing volume. It's like, well, you're not. Because I just turned that down, the volume. Now it's like more crisp and it has like a clarity to it. You still have room here on your overall master. Bring that where you want it. So I just changed the overall characteristic of the amp simply by turning down the volume and turning up the overall global master. And then once again, you can balance everything between the channel masters and your global masters, and you have a foot switchable global master as well. So you've got a lot of bases covered to dial this thing in. So I guess that's the whole point, is there's so many ways to dial this amp, and I just wanted to kind of point out my thoughts. I would love to hear what you guys think in the comments. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.